All right, well, I'm back with another one of these hand reviews, live stream reviews, after about a 3-month hiatus. Been busy, but hopefully going to get back into it a lot during the months of May and June. May in particular. But anyway, this stream in particular happened on April 16th. And it's a 1-2 with a $10 big blind ante and a frequent straddle as well. This was definitely one of the toughest, most reg-heavy lineups of any stream I've played on. It's not like the table's full of crushers or anything, but at best, like everyone is at best like tough to get money out of, and you know, like there are a couple of really, really solid players at the table as well. I mean, you can see ACR Team Pro bet on Drew to my direct left, which you know, I wasn't happy to see on the table in the initial seat draw, but you know, he's a very cool guy. I really enjoy playing with him. I'm always up for a battle, but you know, I'd rather play against a more action-filled lineup. If you were watching this lineup for the action, then you probably were disappointed. Anyway, let's get right into this hand. There's an open from under the gun to $25, and I'm in under the gun +1, and I make the call with King Jack suited. Yeah, definitely a playable hand, although you know, it's a little awkward being early position versus early position. Make the call, and looks like there are 4 other callers as well. Go to a good flop for me. It's Jack 7 deuce rainbow with a heart. So I got top pair, good kicker, and a backdoor flush draw. But when the under the gun player leads out for $125, which is nearly a pot-sized bet, into 5-way pot, this is definitely setting off alarm bells for me. I'm not really loving this spot, but I've never really played with Doug before this. And I don't think I can fold just yet, especially with the backdoor flush draw. Not really sure how he plays, but from what I can tell, he seems to know a good amount of the regulars in the room, and he didn't seem like you know, a VIP, if you will, at all. He seemed like at least a decent player, from what I could tell. Someone who like competent. That's probably the best word that I could use. Anyway, that was my read on him at the time. I make the call, everybody else folds, and the turn's a brick for 4 clubs, and he checks to me. And at this point, I can decide whether to check pot control or bet, and take the betting initiative. And when he checks to me, I really don't think he's trapping with you know, a strong hand at all. My call looks very strong considering that there were 3 people left to act behind me. So I don't think I'm worried about trapping. And yeah, as you can see, he didn't really have much. He had pocket tens. Not really sure what he was doing betting the flop there. But yeah, I decided to bet to take the betting initiative and really just plan to check back rivers. There are a lot of bad rivers for my hand in particular. Alright, this next hand's kind of funny, actually. The opponent in this hand was the only one at the table who didn't initially want to play the stand-up game, and eventually when we kind of, I guess, compromised by making it only a $10 bounty for the stand-up game the first time we played, which really is nothing considering the stack sizes, like stakes, what it was on the table. So it just became very clear that he was a huge nit. And when he opens under the gun to $40, and I look down at ace king on the button, I actually kind of hate it. I could flat, but I just feel like flatting would enable me to lose more money on future streets if I end up like making a marginal hand. Or like picking up a draw of some sort or anything. And I just wanted to 3-bet to kind of see how he responds. Like, I hate using the phrase see where I was at, but that's really what I was doing, because I knew that if he re-raised, then I could get away from it. And that's what he does. He pretty much snap shoves for 1100, And you can see before the camera pans back to me, I open fold the ace king face up. Now it's like not really that crazy of a decision to fold the ace king for such a massive shove, because at best you're flipping against a huge part of his range, like you're at best flipping, and at worst dominated. But I just would throw it in there just because I just made it it became very obvious how much of a nit this guy was. Alright, this next hand's an interesting one. Not really sure if I like how I played it, but I was kind of mixing it up a little bit. You can see that I get queens out of the gun +1. There's a $10 straddle. It says +2 next to my name, but that's just because under the gun straddled for 10. And I had no idea that like Doug was opening like this loosely. He seemed like a player on the tighter side up to this point, like, or at least not necessarily on the tighter side, but more ABC, I guess. Hadn't really seen him get out of line, and I make the call because I've been trying to mix some big pairs into my early position flat range, and this table is very 3-bet happy. So, like, considering how many good regs there are, so I thought I could defend pretty well against the squeeze. Anyway, flop comes 8-7 deuce, and it checks to me, and the third player in this hand, Mike Bell, is a very solid reg. I have a lot of respect for his game. And I end up leading for $100 when the initial raiser checks, and Mike calls. So we go heads up to a turn, which is a 4 of spades, bringing in 2 flush draws, and I really think I need to bet here. I think in the moment I was thinking I hold a queen of spades and a queen of clubs, so I can check, blocking the flush draws. But like all of my bluffs are just going to continue to barrel this turn. I thought the 4 was like better for his range because he could have 5-6, but he really shouldn't be overcalling that in the cutoff. I would expect him to 3-bet that more if he wanted to play it at all. And then, yeah, so I really don't like my check on the turn. He checks back, and the river's an ace of diamonds, and I think about it for a while because I feel like he's super capped in this spot when he checks back turn, but I didn't see a reason to bet on the ace. He could have nut flush draws the river a pair, and I just feel like I'm value owning myself if I bet river. I'm rarely going to get called by worse. Just seems a little awkward. On the very next hand, I get rewarded for my poor play with the queens with 2 kings. I open +1 to $25, which may seem crazy in a 1-2 game, but there's a $10 big blind ante, so just remember that. I get called in middle position and by the button. And we go 3 ways out of position with pocket kings. And flop comes jack high rainbow. Now I check here as I would with basically my entire range. My check range is very protected here, and I want to see what sizing anyone goes for. See if I can induce a bluff from some gut shots. But the board is like really dry. I just don't have very much to protect against whatsoever. I consider a raise here, but end up just flatting. I don't want to scare off like a weak Jack X. And I want gut shots to continue to pile money in. There isn't much to protect against, but this turn, Queen of Clubs definitely introduces some more stuff to protect against. But when he chooses a sizing of 125, it doesn't really it just didn't really feel that strong to me. I instantly just thought he was just trying to buy a cheap showdown. So I actually called turn with plans to lead this river because I thought that would be much more effective at getting money than check raising. And I ended up leading river for about half pot, looking to get called by Jack X. I didn't think he had the ace high kicker, Otherwise, I might have gone a little bit bigger, but I feel like I like my half pot lead, and I feel like Jack X is just never folding here, especially this player. So I think I played it a little unorthodox, but I think it worked out. Just a little awkward being out of position. Next hand's very interesting. I open up ace-6 suited and +3 to $25, and Mike Bell 3-bets the button to $80. And we're mega deep here, so I don't think I can really fold. And I think it's a little weak to 4-bet. I think I can definitely fold sometimes, but definitely want to have some defense here. And I make the call. Ace-6 suited. Flop's an interesting one. It's 9-9-8, which is generally going to be better for me than it is for him. I have not my range, that is, and while I don't really have much. I just have ace high and a backdoor flush draw. I definitely can float here. I decide to float here out of position. I think he has a lot of one and done type of hands on this board. So that's why I decided to float here. Turn's an interesting one. It's a 7 of spades, completing a lot of the straight draws and giving me the dummy end of the open ender. I check and flow, and he quickly checks behind. The river bails me out. It's a 5 of hearts. So at this point, I feel like my range is super polar. I'm either gonna have a straight, a flush, or like some airball float. I suppose I could have some overpairs, but I think I would raise those at some frequency on the flop. So this is why I go for a bigger sizing here. I go 425. I go full pot. He snap folds, but I think I like my polar sizing, since like I'm going to be doing this with a lot of my airball floats as well, considering how good that river card is for all the draws that I can call the flop with. All right. Another interesting hand here. Doug opens the button. It folds to Doug all the way on the button, and he opens to $30. And I have ace-10 of diamonds in the small blind. This is a very clear 3-bet, so I make it 125. And Doug pretty quickly calls. I don't think he's particularly loose here. He might be a little too wide, but he's not calling with bullshit in this spot. So when the flop comes Queen Jack 8, I actually don't really love it, because this kind of smashes a lot of his open and calling range. I decided to check and I actually don't like this play. I think I should bet because my hand just has a little bit too much equity. But for the most part, I should have a lot of checks on this flop for sure. I think my particular hand just wants to bet though. He quickly checks back and the turn's a jack of diamonds. And I decide to, take a stab at it, kind of set my own price considering how strong of a draw I have. And, he could check back a lot of Jack X too, and but I think it would be a little bit, a little bit wild if he raised Jack X. I shouldn't say wild, a little bit. I don't think he's raising Jack X all the time on this, on the turn. So I feel like I could set my own price and be able to see the river for $150. River's ace, interesting. I have a 2-pair. Obviously, my kicker doesn't play, but it ends up giving him a straight. And I feel like when I check here, I'm going to have a lot of ace-king. Like, my hand is pretty... my hand is... I'm very capped when I check river here. And I think from his perspective, he can, when he goes for a $500 bet on the river, I don't think he expects me to fold ace king. I think rivering a pair is something a lot of people have, like when people like improve on the river, a lot of people have trouble getting away from it because like they think, oh, I improved. I have like if like I have to you know, defend or something like that. But I just think he's super like it's very hard to find intuitive bluffs here. He would have to turn like a queen or an like 9-8 into a bluff or something. Like I just can't really imagine what he calls turn with that doesn't, you know, like this or that bluffs here really.
Just out there playing some 1-2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you got felted or you got bored? Decided to pop back in here or what?
Call from 1.
Is Jacob playing John George's hand?
Out of 7-4 clubs.
I go another hour of just folding and hitting and missing before this hand happens, where Jacob limps the button. I complete in the first straddle. I straddle the 5 and I complete the $10 with ace-6 of hearts. And Drew in the $10 straddle makes it 40. Jacob calls the button and getting a decent price with a suited ace. Out of position though, but you know, it's a stream. I don't think I can fold at this point. My VPIP was very low. So get a decent flop here. 10-10-6 with back 2 spades and a heart, so backdoor hearts. Definitely not folding on the flop here to any unless it was bet raise. So when I check and Drew checks in the middle, I expect his checking range to be pretty protected. So I don't necessarily think he has air or like is particularly capped in this spot. Yeah, Jacob takes a stab. I make a call, of course, and Drew actually ends up overcalling, which was kind of alarming to me. But you know, he could have draws. He could have even like gut shots. Could have weaker 6x. But yeah, don't really like when Drew overcalls. The 9 of clubs is not the best card as it completes some of those gut shots that Jacob may be bluffing with or Drew might have overcalled with. And we both check to Jacob and he ends up checking behind, which kind of confirms my suspicion that he didn't really have much. The river is a 3 of spades completing the flush. And yeah, this is just a pretty bad run out for my particular hand. An interesting thing happens here on the river though. Drew bets a very small amount. He bets 125, which is like a third of the pot, a little more than a third of the pot. And I really don't know why I thought about this hand as long as I did. I took like 2 minutes to make this decision. I don't know why the camera's still on Jacob, but because it's not even his action. Yeah, he bets. Yeah, you can see that there's $125 in front of Drew. He already made the bet. Jacob's Hollywooding before he makes the fold, or maybe thinking about getting frisky. But yeah, spoiler alert, he does end up making the fold. And it's kind of back on me. Like I said, I took 2 minutes. If I realized how much time I took with that, I would not have I would not have tanked for that long. But it was just such a small price. That was the main reason I was considering a call here. It just didn't make too much sense that he would bet that small with a value hand. And Jacob's line does look pretty weak. However, I think for me, it just like my hand in particular, just still with the flush coming in, I could totally have some strong hands to call with. And ace-6 itself, like I was talking about this in the moment, but it's a pretty bad bluff catcher. I don't block straights. I don't have a spade to block flushes.
Eric's trying to get some info out of him.
And interesting thing is, like, I'm tanking and I talk to him, I say something like, that's a really small sizing. Like, I asked him, like, is that a tournament sizing? Because he's a tournament pro. And he says, yeah, I don't really like it, in hindsight. And I say, you wish you would have gone bigger? And he says, yes. So that was just some interesting table talk.
Doug's just sitting over there.
That you, but I'm gonna fast forward and just save you the weight, and yes, I do end up making the fold.
Eric trying to think of something he could beat.
Literally can't even think of anything.
All right, this next hand happened another hour after the last one. I was super card dead the second half of the stream. And yeah, this was the first playable hand I picked up since losing the stand-up game. The second stand-up game for $25 each. I opened King Jack suited and +1 to $35 over and under the gun straddle to 10.
Another King Jack suited.
Folds all the way to the small blind, who makes the call.
Another King Jack offsuit this time for Kyle. Jacob's in there. 6-4 suited.
Big blind also makes the call here as well. And Doug in the straddle gets out of the way. So we go 3 ways to a flop in position with King Jack of hearts. And it's a pretty good one. It's an ace-high disconnected board, but with a flush draw. So when it checks to me, I decide to c-bet on the bigger side to get value, to put pressure on ace. I'm looking to put pressure on ace-x on future streets, get value from weaker flush draws, and when the turn comes a deuce of spades, I get one color from Jacob. Turn comes a deuce of spades. I think there's a great card to overbet, actually. Put max pressure on ace-x. And I decide in my head to go for a $375 bet. But if you'll notice that I pick out 4 black ones by accident. Put it over the line. And he snap folds his 4, but you can hear me say that I meant to go 375, not 475. So a live misclick right there. All right, and this is the final interesting hand of the stream. It's probably the biggest decision I had all night. Bet on Drew opens to $35 from under the gun +1 over my under the gun straddle to 10. It's several callers, and I look down at the straddle at king queen offsuit and close the action with a call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop out of position, and the flop is interesting. It's queen high with 2 clubs, and I do have the king of clubs.
Top pair for Eric,
I check as I normally would. Drew checks quickly, and Big Fish checks as well to John, who takes a stab at it for $90. Obviously not folding at all, or not thinking of folding at all, and raising would kind of be suicidal. So I just make the call, knowing that John is a very solid, loose, aggressive player that is capable of, putting me in tough spots on later streets, and that's exactly what happens. Big Fish also comes along, but I'm not really too afraid of that. I would expect him to raise any hand better than mine, except for ace queen, and I don't think he would have ace queen. I think he would 3-bet that pre-flop at some frequency. Turn is a 6 of hearts, putting 2 flush draws out there, and John sizes up to 225. Not really loving this spot, as I don't think I beat any value hands anymore. But still can't fold yet against a good player that's capable of making moves, even in multi-way spots like this. Big Fish gets out of the way, and now we're just heads up to a river that completes the backdoor flush. It's the ace of hearts. I actually don't think the ace is very relevant at all.
So John goes from the nuts.
And let's listen to what size John goes for. Oh, I guess can't hear, but he said 16.25, so he overbets nearly 2x pot.
But it got
And at this point, he's repping the straight, a backdoor flush, or an absolute airball.
1600?
I honestly don't think he would bet a set like this because not many worse hands are really going to, not very many worse hands are going to be able to make this call. So at this point, I'm really just putting him on a mega, like a super polarized range, which is why I tanked so long here with just a queen. I don't think the ace is very relevant here. I don't think he takes this sizing with ace queen, and obviously ace x of clubs would just want to probably would want to pot control or go for much smaller bet, obvious reasons. So and my range when I just flat the turn is also super capped. Like maybe I won't. Maybe there's like strong hands I won't raise on the flop, but if I don't raise them on the flop, I'm absolutely going to have to raise them on the turn. So he does a very good job at recognizing how capped my range is and putting me in a very difficult spot. With the marginal hand that I have. And that's why I think for so long, because like I know that he knows that I'm super capped in this spot, so that's why he overbets. I do have some backdoor flushes though, and that's what ultimately ends up making the decision. Like I definitely could have some like a hand like I'm thinking in the moment he obviously has 7-8 of hearts, but 7-8 of hearts is a hand that I totally could have in this spot myself.
Does he know that the bet is 1600?
Could have. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to think of too many other backdoor flushes, but maybe some pair with hearts that I decide to call on the flop. But yeah, like it's just so it's such a difficult spot because I'm really close to the top of my range here. Because if I don't have a flush, or like specifically 7-8. I have to just fold here so often, but it's such a monster bet size that I think I can. It's okay for me to fold, despite being so high up in my range. And I also mentioned having the king of clubs is bad, which you know, it blocks some of his triple barrel flush draws. Which, you know, I think in theory, having the king of clubs might be good because like. He would want to give up on the river with a club draw since he blocks my folds. But in practice, I think having the king of club, like he's definitely capable of triple barreling off a flush draw for that size, just because I'm so capped, and he has to have bluffs there. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the stream. I started off strong and then kind of had a bad second half, but it was good to get back in the mix. And hopefully, I can make a lot more of these videos in May.